construction and she was making like maybe $75,000 a year. That was her definition of doing well. But that doesn't mean that she's doing well. That means that she went to college and got a job that pays her a decent salary. But that does not mean that she actually has a positive net worth. That does not mean that she's financially secure. That does not mean that she's happy with her life. That does not mean that her wealth is diversified. So really, when you talk about somebody doing well, it's very important to start at the very least to make sure we all understand what the goal is, right? The goal at the end of the day is having a positive net worth. A positive net worth means one basic thing. It means that the amount that you own exceeds in value the amount that you owe. It means that your assets exceed your liabilities. If your liabilities are greater than your assets, then that's like being in a basketball game where you're losing by 20 points and you're trying to catch up before the buzzer runs out. Okay. And it doesn't mean, losing the game does not necessarily mean that you can't win. Sometimes you take a step backwards so you can take 2 or 3 steps forward. But what happens, unfortunately, for many of us educated Negroes, many of us who went to college and got all these degrees and everything, is that we take a few steps backward and don't take any steps forward. We take a few steps backward, go deep in debt, get a bachelor's degree, then go get a job, and then say, look, mama, I made it. But you haven't made it yet. You're still $150,000 in debt. So from a net worth standpoint, you haven't made it. But from a swaggadocious standpoint, from a clout standpoint, maybe you have, right? So from a clout chasing standpoint, you're doing great because you're driving a Lincoln Navigator and you live in a nice neighborhood. But from a net worth, generational wealth standpoint, there's still a lot of catching up to do. Okay. So effectively, this is what I see. When I think about the folks that I know talking about culture, I know a lot of fancy, highly educated Black people that live in cities like parts of Washington, D.C., Prince George's County, stuff like that. And nothing against them at all. But I would almost say to individuals in that space that you have a tremendous capacity to contribute to the Black community, but you have to sort of hustle a little bit differently and really position your kids a little bit differently. So a different way to position your kids is, number one, I think, again, we talk about things like the $5 a day investing plan. That's free. That's on my website, boycewatkins.com. You can go get that for free, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So what that does is that gives your child wealth, which can at least minimize or reduce or eliminate all those crazy student loans. Student loans, the healthcare system, the educational system are 2 of the biggest wealth drainers in our society. So you got to be real careful with those 2 things. They're almost like economic STDs. So you got to be really careful with those 2 things. That's why you take care of your health, so you don't have to go and take all the pills and get all the drugs and get all the surgeries, because they've been selling you refi diabetes since you were little. You protect your health so you don't end up being eaten up by the healthcare system. And then also, educationally speaking, you figure out what's the best education you need and how do you get it in a cost-effective way, so you're not so drowning in debt that you basically become an educated sharecropper. Okay. If you don't remember, sharecroppers were people that were so deep in debt that they pretty much had to work their whole life to reach a goal that wasn't reachable. They had to work their whole life to get out of an amount of debt that they really couldn't get out of. Right. So you're just working until you die, basically, so they can then put somebody else in your place. The other piece of that too is that a lot of us who got our degrees and everything, there's nothing wrong with that. But really, I think that when we pick up our skills, I think it's very important to say, okay, I get it. If you want to get a certain skill that's going to get you a job, right? That's basically, in my view, honestly, and I don't want to sound mean or radical when I say this, but honestly, I see this as I believe I need this skill to get this job because some person who owns a company who happens to be a white guy told me to go learn how to do this so that he'll then pay me to do this for him, and he'll pay me, give me a paycheck. And I think that's fine. I think that's might be a necessary skill. But then I think thinking deeper about what it means to have the necessary skill to achieve the necessary goal. So getting trained to, I don't know, to be a manager in somebody's business or something, that might be a necessary skill to get a paycheck. But then what about the skills that are necessary for you to really create and build the life that you want? What about the skill of doing things like running a family? I really think that your family is your $1 million play, by the way. The family is probably the most important thing that we have in the community. That's why they work so hard to destroy it. What about this idea? It may sound radical. I don't think it's radical. What about, learning how to head a household and run a family and pick a spouse and stay married How about studying that as hard as you studied accounting and biology and math and dentistry and whatever else you studied to build your career? Why not? I mean, this is going to be more important than your career, your family. You do understand. Can we at least agree that your family is more important than a job? Can we at least agree on that? Can we at least agree that doing things for your wife and for your kids and for your family is more important than doing things for that white guy that you work for down at the plant? Like, can we at least agree on that? Okay, if we agree on that, give me a yes if you agree. If we agree on that, then to me, it would seem that you would put more energy into studying the thing that matters the most than you put into studying the thing that matters the least. I'm not saying you shouldn't study what you have to study to get the job. Like, of course, you got to have skill and marketable skill. And all. I get that. But what about the skills that are going to really matter in the nuts and bolts of you building the life that you want? Or even other things that become important skills, like taking care of your health, just even growing up, knowing what the right food to eat, so you don't end up giving all your money back away to the healthcare industry, right? Or another skill would be just things like what it takes to build a community, what it takes to build two things: what it takes to build a community, what it takes to build freedom, right? Building a community, for example, we've talked about this, so I won't overtalk this one, but building a community requires people that have the skill of a builder, right? If I want to build a hotel in a community that has no hotel, I got to know how to start a business. That's a skill that you might not get when you go to college. You got to go learn how to do that, though, the entrepreneurship, right? Another skill is there are other skills in terms of people that I'd have to bring in and hire, like the carpenter and the electrical person and the HVAC person and the plumber and all the people that we've been trained to look down on. Why do you look down on the plumber? Why do you look down on the carpenter? What's wrong with the person that can do the HVAC? Ain't nothing wrong with those people. You need those people. If you're trying to build a community, you need people that know how to build stuff, who know how to actually create something, right? So that, again, that's another skill that is, I think, very important if your goal is really to be about it in terms of building for the community. Building in the Black community means building the families. Building the Black community means building the businesses. Building in the Black community, it might even mean building other things that relate to your physical and emotional health or whatever matters to you, right? So if you're building a community and you're building freedom, then that to me says that you need to have either yourself or people around you, people that have the skill to build things physically, but then also it means definitely, without a doubt, you have to have a whole lot of entrepreneurs and investors around. You have to have a whole lot of people that understand basic ideas like how to start an entity and create some sort of institution. And then also people that are able to understand investing as a source of delayed gratification to allow you to get the things that are going to benefit you in the long term. You can't create a forest unless somebody 20, 30 years ago started planting trees. You follow me? You cannot have a forest overnight. You can't, it's hard. I don't even think it's possible. But there are forests that exist now because in the 1980s, there's literally a couple that did that. In the 1980s, they started planting seeds, and thousands of them every day in this area. And then now it's like this big gigantic forest full of trees, right? So in the Black community, if we want to have a forest full of thriving businesses, right? You think of money as money trees, right? If you want to have all these money trees, meaning these $1 million, $1 billion entities all throughout your community, then somebody has to plant those seeds now. And it's not a glamorous job. It's not very flashy. It doesn't fit what people tell us is the culture, right? The culture is to be flashy right now. I think the culture should be that we don't need to be flashy right now. In fact, we never need to be flashy because our self-esteem is not that fragile. I don't have to impress you with, if you notice, for example, my wife and I, we're not poor. I assume you know we're not poor, but you're not going to see me getting on a video, pulling up in a Lamborghini and showing you my $25,000 Rolex and my $10,000 suit. Why? I don't want to impress you with stuff like that. I want to impress you by trying to be a good person. I want to impress you by working hard. I want to impress you by being smart and explaining things in a way that's going to benefit you. That's my way of connecting with you. It's not with like silly material stuff. There's nothing wrong with that stuff. But I think that this is where that economic immaturity ends up infecting the culture, ends up infecting the minds of so many young people. And it's very unfortunate. It's kind of sad. I was just, my wife and I were just in a conference just now. That's why I was a little bit late, in a conference called Marriages for Grown Folks. And in this conference, it's being run by two people. Their names are Ayiz and Ayana Ma'at. I wrote their names down because I like their names, and I forget names very quickly. But they're really good at what they do, and they're this really mature couple that really talks about, being married and having a good family, and it's all therapy based and science based, and it's really good. And I said, you know who the most famous couple is on the internet right now that I know about, as far as like number of followers and all that? It's this guy, this rapper named Blueface, and he has a girlfriend named Chrissy and Rock. You should look him up. This is so fascinating. So Blueface, I heard about Blueface because he's this guy. He's got like 1,000 tattoos all over his face and all up and down his body. And I heard about him first because he was a singer or a rapper or something. And he said he had sex with 5,000 women in 1 year. And I remember thinking they should call the CDC because you're gonna kill a lot of people with whatever diseases you probably got. And so anyway, and then Christian has like one tooth missing. She's missing a tooth, and she was Madam President was speaking about because she was smoking weed while she was pregnant, right? And this is the kind of stuff that people love. They like this toxic stuff. Now, mind you, some of that's a little entertaining, right? So it's like the way people used to watch Bobby and Whitney 20 years ago. Everybody kind of knew how that was going to end. It wasn't going to end well, right? And so with these two, maybe they're the new Bobby and Whitney, but I just really said to myself, I said, it's so interesting that unfortunately we've been trained to not learn our lessons from the toxicity, right? We follow that, we love that. But then when someone comes along with something that's healthy, balanced, and productive, it's like, that's boring. That's too boring. And really when I see those two doing their show, I see trauma. And the reason they make millions of dollars is because trauma leads to drama. And people love the drama. And the oppressor, who's already typecast you with, what was the word Dr. Anderson used? Social constructs of what Black people are and what Black families look like. They're willing to pay millions of dollars for these two to go out and express undiagnosed trauma in a way that's entertaining for other people. Instead of getting them the help that they need, they say, hey, keep doing more of that because that's why we're paying you. Like, in fact, the one of those really stupid, sick, mentally ill shows, one of those Real Housewives shows where the ladies all wear like fancy clothes and beat each other up. That's a financial show, by the way, because all those women on the, first of all, a lot of them have never been anybody's housewife, but also they're on there because they were married to a wealthy man or something, right? Or maybe they became wealthy on their own. But they literally said that they were getting a whole new cast for that show because the last show had the worst ratings, like, in 15 years. And a lot of the reasons the ratings were bad is because they weren't in there beating each other up and expressing undiagnosed mental illness and just acting a damn fool. So this is the world we live in. This is the challenge, right? Where people are telling us, or they're serving you very toxic ideas and energy and visuals, and they're saying this is your culture. This is what Black people do. All right. So anyway, let me read more. So Dr. Anderson was explaining how in the District of Columbia, the average white household has a net worth of $284,000, and the net worth of Blacks was only $3,500. This disparity was even more stark because within the region, Prince George's County, Maryland, it has the highest concentration of wealthy and educated Blacks in America. In case y'all know, Prince George's County, very bougie place. I've been there, very nice people. And they say, yet Hispanic immigrants in DC have 4 times the net worth of Blacks. Even though as a group, 90% have been in America and DC for barely 40 years. So let that sink in. So I think you got to really ask yourself, like, what does progress really look like? Like, I think you should ask it, in a very simple way. Maybe start with those 3 key areas of life: health, wealth, and relationships. Those are 3 major. That's an easy way to kind of define. Do I have a good life or a bad life? Am I achieving my goal or not achieving my goal? I think you should start by health, wealth, and relationships, right? So if you look at the state of Black people, when Tavis Smiley used to have something great called the State of Black America. And so if you look at the state of Black America and you say, okay, where are Black people in terms of health? Are we healthier than we were before? Are we healthier than other groups? Or are we less healthy than other groups? Are we less healthy than we were before? Is the trend upward or is it downward? What do y'all think, right? Mental and physical health. Do you see progress there? Do you see us doing better physically or doing worse? And then wealth. Is Black wealth going up or is Black wealth going down? Is Black financial security going up or is Black financial security going down? Right. And it really depends on who you ask and where you look. In some areas it's going up. For some people, it's going up. Some families, like I think B1 families, you don't understand that a lot of you are building multi-million, multi-billion dollar entities in your family. What you're doing is you're running the first leg of a relay race. And the analogy I would give is if you look at the U.S. World Championship 4x100 meter relay team, it was anchored by Noah Lyles. Noah Lyles is currently the fastest human being on the planet. And Noah Lyles got the baton after the stick was carried by Christian Coleman, who gave it to Fred Curley, who gave it to another guy, I forgot his name, who passed it to Noah. So basically, here's the thing, though. If Christian had not carried the baton and Fred had not carried the baton, then Noah would never have had a chance to show how fast he was. He never would have had a chance to win the gold medal. So no matter how fast Noah is, nothing would have mattered if the first, second, and third legs had not gotten that stick all the way around the track. So why do I bring that up? Well, because for some of you, your big play, your big gold medal for your family may be 2 or 3 generations deep. You might be 2 or 3 generations away from that person in your family who's really going to take what you leave them and really take it to the next level. You know, you may have a grandchild where you hand them the baton. They may be born in the year 2060, and you hand them the baton, and they're going to run that sucker all the way to the finish line in an extraordinary way. They're going to break a world record, but nothing matters if you don't hand them the baton. Nothing matters if they're born in the middle of chaos and struggle and a broken family and a whole lot of trauma. Do you get what I'm saying? Give me a yes, you follow what I'm saying. Nothing will matter, no matter how talented that kid is, if you leave them no wealth, if you leave them no skill, if you drop them into a busted up, broken down, torn to pieces situation where they got to dodge crack pipes and gunshots to get to school every day, to where they're so traumatized and so miseducated that they don't know which way is up or which way is down. All they're going to be is the result of misguided genius. All they're going to be is Malcolm Little that never ever transforms into Malcolm X. You got to remember, Malcolm Little would have lived and died as Malcolm Little if it had not been for great individuals like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and great institutions like the Nation of Islam. Say what you want about the Nation of Islam. You ain't never going to hear me say anything negative about the nation, despite the fact that the legacy can be complicated at times. We know these things, but really it took the kind of power of the Nation of Islam to really reshape the trajectory of Malcolm Little. In most cases, Malcolm Little would never be derailed. He would just be Malcolm Little. He would just become more and more of himself as he got older. So your community is filled with, 20, 30 million Malcolm Littles who will never be turned into Malcolm X. Unfortunately, this is a very sad reality. So ultimately, you got to give them the baton. You got to just run your leg. That's it. Don't worry about what place you're in. Don't worry about how fast you can run. Don't worry about how good you are. Don't worry about how much money you've accumulated. No, your gift to your kids and your grandkids is going to be the things that money cannot buy. My grandmother never made more than $22,000 a year, but if my grandmother had not talked to me about wealth when I was a baby and economics in a very basic way, I probably wouldn't be sitting here in front of you right now. So the things she did created Dr. Boyce Watkins. Just little basic, stupid, little decisions that seem to mean nothing. Like my mother deciding not to abort me, right? That's a big one. That was a pretty big decision in 1971. It seems insignificant now because I'm here, right? But there's another parallel universe where I'm not here. You're watching Netflix right now in that parallel universe because I was never born. Do you understand? And then there's another parallel universe where there's thousands of me out here, all doing the same thing, fighting equally hard, doing the exact same stuff that I'm doing right now, but they don't exist because those men and women were aborted or derailed by the public school system or sent to prison at an early age or hooked on drugs by the age of 18 or distracted in some other way. So I want you to be able to understand, in my view, this is what my goal is for you. This is what I'm sharing right now is I want you to really see all the possibilities of what we can do and what we can become by really understanding all of the, not just the opportunities, but the prices that are paid when certain things are not addressed, right? Like when we don't directly address the fact that Chicago has 55 public schools that ruin the lives of thousands of kids every year because they don't have a single child that can read, write, or do math at grade level. That is epically, chronically disgusting and scary. That's absolutely crazy. In economics, they call that a shadow cost. A shadow cost is the cost that you paid, but you don't even realize you paid it because you had something taken away, but you don't know that it was taken away because you didn't even know you had it in the first place. Do you follow me? It's like if somebody was going to give you $1 million and then they decide not to give you $1 million, but you don't think you lost anything because you don't even know they were thinking about giving you the money. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does everybody get that concept? So look it up. In economics, they call this a shadow price. Black people pay an enormous shadow price just from all the lost potential that occurs because we're not doing basic things like educating our own kids. If we were just simply educating our own kids, a lot of that potential that gets lost would actually be fulfilled. And you would see a whole lot of Malcolm Littles turned into Malcolm X's, but instead they just become Malcolm Littles and that's where they stay. Okay. So anyway, let me keep reading here. So Dr. Anderson says here on page 6 of the Black History Reader, his website is powernomics.com. If you want to go get a copy of the book, he says the same bottom rung status applies to blacks in business ownership, wealth accumulation, and in the hiring process. A group becomes a permanent underclass when, regardless of individual exceptions that exist, we have a lot of individually successful people, the group remains fixed at the lowest levels century after century, regardless of whether the mainstream economy is experiencing boom or bust times. So ask yourself, does that sound like black people? A group that has individual success but remains collectively at the lowest level century after century, regardless of whether the mainstream economy is experiencing a boom or bust. Does that sound like black people? What do y'all think? Does that sound like us? Because we got a whole lot of fancy Negroes on magazine covers and on TV, rapping about how much money they have, right? With all that success that's being marketed to us, we should all be rich, right? We should all be balling out of control. No, but we don't. Because that has nothing to do with systematic racism. That's not system. That's individual. That's not systematic. In finance, we call that idiosyncratic. Idiosyncratic is specific. It's a one-off. It's not the rule. It's the exception to the rule. The rule is that black people stay in an underclass. An underclass, the black race, and its members are routinely blamed for their own socioeconomic dilemma. Conservatives argue that black underclass status results from failure to take advantage of the offers to all groups. They further postulate that blacks are handicapped by their attitudes, values, culture, and work ethic, which differ from that of mainstream white society. Blacks did not become a permanent underclass on their own. And that's an interesting point Dr. Anderson makes. Because what's interesting to me is that I don't think this is where I would add to what he's saying. I don't think it's conservative nature itself that leads to this outcome. I don't think it's being a conservative or whatever it is people want to call themselves that does it, because there are a lot of black people that are very conservative, right? Dr. Anderson is somewhat conservative. Louis Farrakhan is somewhat conservative. And what I like about my conservative friends is that it comes with a lot of tough love. It comes with a lot of constructive criticism, which differs in my mind from destructive criticism, right? Destructive criticism just says black people don't have anything because they're lazy and they don't work hard enough. And if they worked harder, they would have more success. That might be true, but constructive criticism would say that we know that it's when you acknowledge that there are societal factors that create the conditions that black people are born into, and that they create obstacles that we have to overcome, right? And I think that's a very kind of a tiny nuance is very important to remember, though, because I don't want it to be something where it's like liberal versus conservative. I don't think the liberals have a monopoly on blackness, and neither do the conservatives. They don't. Because the downside of liberalism can be that you make an excuse for everything, right? And when someone gives you a crutch before you ever learn how to walk, then you'll never learn how to use your legs. You'll never walk for yourself, because you're going to grab a crutch every time something gets hard, every time something goes wrong. You're going to say it's racism, it's racism, it's racism. All of us know black people like that. Just like women, y'all know women who literally want to blame men for everything, even when they make bad choices. It's the men. So what that does is that undermines the credibility and the legitimacy of whatever you're fighting for, right? It undermines your movement as a black person if you're blaming every single thing on race, or it undermines the Me Too movement when you might have women that lie or use the Me Too movement to achieve a personal objective. So I think it's a thin line. Where I stand on this is that I do believe in personal power. I do believe that not only can we fight to overcome these obstacles, but we have to. We absolutely have to. Because if we say, well, we're not going to do it because we're waiting for white people to start changing their behavior, I think you're going to be waiting for the rest of your life. I really do. I don't really know. I mean, what's the other solution? Is it to sit back and say, gosh, we don't want to blame ourselves. We don't want to victim blame. And right there, that's a problem, because you're defining me as a victim. I might have been kind of a victim, but it doesn't really help me to just see myself as a victim, unless you say, yes, you were a victim, but now we're gonna figure out a way to keep you from remaining a victim. Now we're gonna figure out a way for you to fight back, and I think that's a really important balance to have. Like, I think you can acknowledge racism. Like my grandmother would acknowledge racism. She would say, yeah, white people gonna be white. They're not gonna change. But white people being white is not gonna stop you from reading a book. White people being racist is not going to stop you from taking care of your kids. white people being mean to you isn't going to stop you from starting a business or getting up off your butt and working hard every day, right? And so effectively, I think that that's a good balance, which in my view says that I don't know if it benefits Black people to get into this Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal conversation. I think it's really a matter of simply understanding the world and figuring out your place in it and being honest with yourself, and setting the right expectations. So for example, when people are really shocked that white people get preferential treatment over them, I'm never really shocked. I'm like, well, why wouldn't they? I mean, you do know what country you live in. You do know that you're Black, right? Did you forget that? Did somebody tell you something different? And I think that the reason they tell us about, they feed us this fairy tale of equality and fairness and democracy, which, they sound like nice stories. I think the reason they feed us that is really honestly to get you to let your guard down. I really do. I think that if you let your guard down, then you're not going to do the things that are necessary for you to be able to defend yourself. If you let your guard down, you're not going to prepare for when things go wrong. You're going to assume everything's going to be okay. If you let your guard down, you're more likely to just sort of integrate yourself into the system, hope for the best, and just believe that people are going to do the right thing. And then that's when you get absolutely body slammed. And so I think I don't have any problem with things like integration. I know people talk about integration, segregation, and separation and all that. I don't think integration necessarily is a bad thing, but I think forced integration is a bad thing, right? And I think integration with the inability to separate is a problem. So it's like if I send my daughter on a date, there's nothing wrong with my daughter going on a date, but there is something wrong with my daughter going on a date where she doesn't have a plan B in case that Negro starts acting up, right? My daughter, if she goes on a date, she should have her own money in case she needs to get an Uber back home, right? If my daughter goes on a date, she needs a backup. So in case she has to reach out for help and, in case something doesn't happen the way she expected. So going on the date is not the issue, but when you go on the date and she's not prepared for all the possibilities, then I think that can make her extremely vulnerable, and that sort of sets her up for victimhood. So I don't believe you should set your kids up for victimhood. If your child has wealth and they've learned how to manage it properly by you, they're not going to be a victim of anybody. They're not going to have to go into any situation they don't want to be in. That's a wonderful feeling, by the way, to be able to choose where you want to be in the places where you are valued, to be in the places where you are safe, to be in the places where you are appreciated, as opposed to having to constantly walk into a toxic space. Think about what this does to your mental health over a long period of time. Think about what this does. There's a link between your mental health and your physical health. When you're always sad, always stressed, always triggered, always angry, it's totally screws up your physical health. So does it surprise you that Black men die faster than everybody else? No, it shouldn't surprise you. We're eating like the worst foods. We go into the worst environments, the most toxic situations. We got to look over our shoulder. You have constant anger, constant fear. All that energy eats away at you. That's called cortisol. Cortisol is that's why even traumatized people, they die younger. People that are heavily traumatized, that's why it's important to get help. If you have dealt with trauma, I encourage you to go get some therapy, stuff like that. I've had to do that. That's something that I'm okay with that. I like therapy because it's fun. It's nice to be able to let it all off my chest and figure things out and understand who I am so I can be a better person. So I think everybody who wants to be better, I encourage you to look into that kind of stuff. All right. So let's see. Someone asked, why didn't you go to Invest Fest? I couldn't go to Invest Fest this year, but I like it. What I love about Invest Fest and Earn Your Leisure and everything is that was my dream. My dream was when I first started doing this stuff, talking about Black wealth every single day. I've been doing it since about probably 2007. As my goal was, like I said, we got to change what the rappers are saying, because the rappers have been used against us. They turned hip hop, the most influential force on the planet. Hip hop they were social media influencers before social media came into existence. So they turned it as a weapon against us. And at that time, urban radio stations, stuff like that, they didn't want to hear about wealth. They would tell me Black people don't want to hear about this kind of stuff. And I would just push back and just do whatever I could. And I just said, if I remain consistent and I explain why we as people need to understand wealth as a community, I believe that the next generation of young Black men are going to, and women as well, are going to grab onto some of that and move forward. So when I see what they're doing, not just with Earn Your Leisure, but so many other young guys that are younger than me doing this kind of thing, and women too, it's exciting to me. It's exciting because it's the beginning of something big. Invest Fest was awesome. They had this big old arena with all these people, and they were all there to talk about Black wealth and economics, and they were not afraid to talk about being Black on the stage. I thought that was amazing, you know. So I mean, one day I think I'm gonna go. But I don't want to take away from the natural attention that kind of work should receive, because this is what we need. We need wealth to be the one of the most important cultural values that we embrace as a community. And I'm talking about doing it in a way also that is ethical, that is healthy, that is beneficial, not just to be flashy, not just to be able to go buy fancy European products, but in a way that says, our community's better because now we're industrializing ourselves. We're building our institutions. We're making these investments for the future. And what I also like about the InvestFest scenario and Earn Your Leisure and everything that they're doing is, because I've known those guys for years, is I love how they are appealing to really young people. And they're making it cool to be economically intelligent. That's something I always wanted. That's what I always said. I said, why wouldn't it? Is it cool to be stupid? Is it cool to be dumb and throw your money away? Is it cool to go broke? There's nothing cool about that. But what is cool is to be secure and to be a quality human being in terms of being able to provide security and support for the people that you love. I mean, that to me is the coolest thing in the world. So I didn't get to go this year. One day I'm going to go. But right now, and I know a lot of those guys over there, 19 Keys and Ash Cash and all. I've known those guys for a while. And I just love it. That's my 2 cents on InvestFest. So thanks for asking. So let me read this last paragraph, and I'll actually answer a few of your questions before we get out of here. So this is page 6 of Dr. Claude Anderson's book, The Black History Reader. This is question number 2. His website is powernomics.com. And my website, by the way, is boycewatkins.com. So if you want to come to the event in LA or something like that, just go to boycewatkins.com. All the information is there, and all the free stuff is there too. It says, it is critically important that Black Americans understand the disadvantages of an underclass status. By the very nature of its socioeconomic conditions, an underclass is predestined to live at the lowest level of the system as beggars or criminals. Right. So you've been, a lot of your young people, especially your young men, are marginalized. And when they're marginalized, it's very dangerous, because then you get pushed into the world of criminality or low-cost labor, right? And there are some people, some of your sons are not trying to go out here working at Burger King. And so they're willing, they'd rather be dead. They'd rather be dead than to be kicked around like that. So they end up, going into dangerous scenarios in order to make money. That's why it's very important to teach them to be entrepreneurs, because I don't think it's healthy for a Black man to wait around to get support from a white man. I don't think that's natural. I don't think that's ever going to work. Just like it wouldn't be natural for a white man to dedicate his whole entire life to hoping that a Black man comes and saves him. Do you think that if white men sat around saying, gosh, I hope a Black man will hire me today, or I hope a Black man will help me feed my family, do you think that he would be successful? Do you think that he would be looked upon in a favorable way? What do you all think? What do you all think? Seriously, like, imagine it. Imagine if every white guy in America just said, gosh, I hope that these Black men will start hiring and giving me opportunities, because without these opportunities, I can't feed my kids. How do you think that would look? Like, do you think that would look good or kind of crazy, kind of weird? It would look kind of weird, right? It looks but that's the world we're introduced to. We're kind of led to believe that this is okay. I don't think it's okay. I don't think it's okay. Why? Well, because we talk about the illusion or the dream of equality. I really do see myself as being equal to other people. I don't see myself as being inferior to white people, Asian people, or anybody else. So any scenario that you apply to me where you say that this is okay for you, I'm going to flip the races and say, okay, well, if it's okay for me, then would it be okay for you? And if it's not okay for you, then I'm gonna be like, well, why is it okay for me to do that, but not okay for you? Why am I? Oh, why does it make sense when I'm in that role, but somehow when I put you in that role, it just looks kind of awkward, right? And this is a good measuring stick, by the way. This is something my mother used to do. That my mother used to when me and my sister would like split a piece of cake and cut it. She had a crazy rule that would just drive us crazy. She said, whoever cuts the cake, the other person gets to pick which piece they want, right? You see what I mean? So that way, ain't nobody gonna get cheated, right? So to me, if you're cutting the cake, I want to get to decide which piece of cake that I want. And basically, it's saying that if that's what you're telling me is good for me, if you're telling me that the small piece of cake is the right piece of cake for me, then cool. Then why don't you eat that cake then too? Why don't you do that? In finance, believe it or not, there's a whole theory about that in finance. They've written thousands of research papers on this. They call it the lemon theory. The lemon theory, to some extent, I'm summarizing literally thousands of research papers here, but we had to read them all when I was working on my doctorate. But the lemon theory kind of just says, if you like it so much, then why don't you do it too. Like, okay, you're telling me I need to eat this food over here. It's because it's healthy. Well, then, okay, you take a bite. Here you go. You can have it. And if you're like, oh no, I don't want it. No, I'm on a diet. Well, then you're telling me something. You're sending me a signal. That's another theory in finance, signaling theory. You're sending me a message that something's not on the up and up. So I want you to ask yourself every time you see people telling Black people that we're supposed to do something a certain way. Like if everybody says Black people got to show up and vote for so-and-so who hasn't done anything for the Black community ever, or somebody, or Black people are supposed to do this, or it's okay for Black men to do that. I want you to switch the race around and say, if these were white people, would this look strange? Or how would this fly? Would this work? Right. So that's equality. That's equality, people. All right. So let's keep going. Let me read here. Neither civil rights nor social integration can effectively help them escape from their underclass status. America's ranking order of social acceptability is tightly woven into the nation's psyche. Some group has to be at the bottom. It is not possible for every group to be equal in a socioeconomic status. The question is, can Blacks muster the mental focus, the resources, and determination to break out and escape after so many years of being frozen at the bottom? If someone steals your car, you want your car back or something of equal value to replace it. Blacks must find a way to recapture that which was lost or stolen from them and use it to escape their constitutionally designed underclass status. And I'm gonna tell y'all this right now. It ain't gonna happen for the whole community in our generation, in my opinion. It's not before any of us are dead, even the 6-year-olds in the room, because some of y'all bring your kids. It ain't gonna happen with the whole community for us. But here's the good news though. The good news is that it doesn't have to happen for everybody. It doesn't. It only has to happen for maybe 5 to 10% of the population, because that 5 to 10% of the population, when you're going to regain what I call the power of the Jews, right? The Jewish community. I have nothing against the Jewish community. When I talked to Kanye West all those hours we were on the phone, I said, look, I don't hate the Jewish community. I don't understand everything that they do, but I admire the ability of a tiny group of people to accumulate so much power that you really think that they're everywhere, that they in your mind, they've become the boogeyman because they've taken that 2.3% of the population and found some way to use economic intelligence and strategy and coordination as a way to accumulate an amount of power that literally makes you think that they are everywhere. They're like Muhammad Ali, where he was so quick, you thought he was in every corner of the ring at the same time. That's what they've done. This is fascinating. We should learn from this, right? So here's the thing. When you get 5 to 10% of your community that has that level of power, where they've got some access to capital, they understand all the strategy, they understand the economics, here's what's going to occur. Those individuals are going to create institutions that are going to be able to shelter and provide economic protection and economic security for millions and millions of people. They're going to build corporations that are going to hire thousands and thousands of people. They're going to be able to go in and revitalize entire communities, entire sections of the city. They're going to do it. Now, the problem is that rappers can't really do it. If rappers could do it, then we'd be the most powerful group of people on the planet. But unfortunately, rappers can rap. They can't really, they don't understand the economics as well. Some of them are trying to get it, and some of them are doing good things. I'm not putting them all to the side. In fact, that's where InvestFest is very powerful. If you harness the power of the rapper and apply that to broad scale economic intelligence on a very high level, then you really have a massive juggernaut that is going to scare the hell out of everybody else. At that point, you need weapons and security, because they're going to probably come and try to fight you and do what the United States does. And the United States dollar is not backed by gold. It is backed by weapons. It is backed by cruise missiles. It's backed by nukes. It's backed by the most expensive military on the planet. So don't be surprised, if that were to occur. Like if there were some artist who suddenly decided he wanted to become like the Malcolm X of economics and really truly industrialize the Black community in a really powerful way, you're gonna have to watch out, because every dirty trick in the book is going to be used to try to stop that. Not so much just because of things like racism, but really due to a type of capitalist entitlement and really dirty competition that can occur when that level of power is accumulated, right? So I don't throw out the celebrities. I don't think that they're just a waste of time. I do think though that it's a lot of misguided power. And I think that also at the same time, there has to be spaces where your smartest and your best and brightest are given not just the platforms they deserve, but also the resources that they need. Because I can tell you that if we were able to go borrow $1 billion, we could build a whole school system just with the teachers that are probably watching this podcast right now. I could literally recruit enough teachers right here in this room to literally run, 10, 20 schools and educate kids at better than the Chicago public school system. But getting access to that capital is really one of the great challenges that our community has. But one day that barrier is going to come down. One day the reparations will be paid. One day America is going to have a better understanding of what needs to be done economically to do right by the Black community. And when that day comes, we have to be ready. And so part of my job right now is I'm running the first leg on a relay race. This is a race I'm not going to see the finish line. None of us are. And so what I believe that I can do to try to help is to educate as many people as I can in terms of sharing a perspective so that when that opportunity arrives, you'll know exactly which way to run the ball. You know exactly what to do with that opportunity. You know exactly how to approach it, how to think about it. Because I know my plan is that in all the videos I've done, about 20,000 videos by now, I want them to be watched for the next 120, 130 years, right? I want this to be a framework and a guideline that can be applied so that in the year maybe 2112, when we finally get what we deserve, we'll be ready to just know exactly what to do. The same way we can all look back. This is another important point. I'll make this point and then we'll be done for today. This is why to this day, we should be studying Marcus Garvey much more than your kids should be studying Garvey more than they study George Washington and even some of the Black civil rights leaders. Dr. King was great. Marcus Garvey, what he did economically was so much greater. How many of your kids understand the model that he used to create an amount of independent power that made him so dangerous that they literally were trying to kill him, deport him, put him in jail, all this other stuff? How did the man do this over 100 years ago? With a fraction of the opportunities that you have to, this should be common knowledge. Like this should be something that all of us are aware of, right? Because imagine if we created 1 million little Garveys, 1 million little kids that all understand the principles and the ideas of Marcus Garvey and are applying these ideas. Unstoppable. That's what it is. And this is something we can do. We can do this. We just have to sort of decide that this is what we're going to do. And don't wait for everybody else. Just do it in your family. Just do it in your house. And everybody else will catch up to you eventually. Okay. So let's go get it done. I'm going to get out of here, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It was great to see you. Also, by the way, if you want to get the profit alerts, I told you guys I send you stocks that I like and stuff like that. It's totally free. Just get on the text list. You can text the word stock to 31996. Text stock to 31996. Also, if you go to boycewatkins.com, you can take a look at some of the stuff we have. The $5 a day plan is on my website. Also, there's a training how to make money without working. There's also you can get an e-copy of my book. It Takes a Village to Raise the Bar. You can have that for free. So feel free to go to my website. And also course information about the event in Los Angeles on September 8th and 9th is there. It's going to be a 2-day Black Wealth training camp. And it's all about kind of like the stuff that I do, actually. This is the first time I've actually talked publicly about the specific stuff that I even do to build this platform and how we can pay our team and all this stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about in Los Angeles. So boycewatkins.com is where you can get the information. So I'll see you guys next week and have a good night, everybody. God bless you. And thank you also, Chanel, for having my back tonight. I truly appreciate that. I'll see you all soon. Take care.